Welcome into the FutureSox RoundUp Live Edition. My name is Elijah Evans, joined as always by my co-host Jeff Cohen. This is our first time doing this. This is a new situation for us, so bear with me as I kind of learn how to run this live thing. We're going to test it out. We're going to see how this goes. We're hoping to make this our Monday thing, Mondays being the off day for the minor leagues. We are hoping that this will be a really cool way to kind of tap in on stuff and just give everybody an update on what's going on in the minor league system, be able to interact a little bit more with everyone, and then just keep things rolling from there. So welcome to everyone who is joining us live. We appreciate you hopping on and saying what's up to us, and we're looking forward to testing this out. So like I said, bear with us, be a little patient here. We're going to learn how this goes. Try it out this week, and hopefully next week and beyond will be smooth sailing. So welcome in, Jeff. How are you doing? What's going on?
Doing great. I'm riding a minor league high. I've been to Winston Green, Kannapolis, and Charlotte already, so it's awesome.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear it. It's a great start. We've had a ton of good content from you. For those who are watching and those who follow along with FutureSox, make sure you're following Jeff at AAA Jeff. He's in person in Charlotte, in Winston-Salem, and Kannapolis. Got a ton of great content this week. You talked to a bunch of players. You were at the FutureSox Showdown last week. You were at the Kannapolis series this weekend. Saw a lot of good stuff. So we're going to talk about that throughout. The plan for today is we're kind of just going to go one by one through the affiliates. We'll start in Charlotte. We'll make our way down Birmingham, Winston, Canny, and we will talk a little bit about every affiliate of the White Sox, what's going on there, how every team is looking at the very beginning of the season. We're only a couple, well, thank you, Ian. Appreciate that. Ian's welcoming us to the live world and this new realm for us. We're only one weekend in to full minor league baseball, so there's still a lot to be figured out. Charlotte is now 9 games into the season. Meanwhile, Birmingham only played 2 with a rain out this week, and then Winston played 3. Kannapolis played 3 as well. All in all, a pretty good first full weekend from all the affiliates. I think there's a lot of positive takeaways, a lot of things that we are happy to see, a lot of things that we're looking forward to seeing, as we kind of gear up for the future of this season. But we'll start with a brief mention of the White Sox. The White Sox with a bit of a rough week. I think we talked about this, Jeff. Like, the bullpen is going to be a revolving door all season. I think we kind of knew it was going to be that way. Some huge bullpen blow-ups this week. A few rough games. Sean Burke with a rough second start coming off of a really good first start. Some ups and downs. I expect that to be the case with the White Sox. I think the only player that we really wanted to briefly mention here on the prospect side of things is Brooks Baldwin. Brooks Baldwin has had a pretty good start to the season. I've liked a lot of what I've seen from Brooks Baldwin. He looks more comfortable in the box than he did at times last season in his brief MLB debut last year. And in general, I just think he looks like he's going to continue to carve out a role, whether it be in this utility, whether it be at second or short. I think he's going to remain that utility type of player. I think that's what best suits him, honestly. Is that kind of what you see for Baldwin going forward?
Yeah, that's unless I think that's the floor, right? As a utility player, and maybe he just forces his hand into a regular spot.
Right.
I have not seen an inning of White Sox baseball yet. I must admit, I'm content watching the minor leagues. The one thing that does concern me is, one of the big reasons that they lost a historic number of games last year were blown saves. They also set the record for the most blown saves in a season.
Yep.
And it looks like they're on that trend again, which is really unfortunate. I was hoping there
Yeah,
might be a little more stability in the bullpen.
it's
And hopefully
interesting. I
there
mean,
will be as the season goes on.
there was a lack of spending, right? So that's kind of what we sort of expected there. I think that's the given with the way things went, that the bullpen was going to be a work in progress. However, there's a lot of guys in Charlotte that I think we think can make an impact this season in Chicago eventually, right? It's just a matter of how they're going to stagger these guys, who's going to come up when. But there is reinforcements, and I think there's a lot of guys that we think could be a legit piece in this bullpen moving forward. They're just not there yet. So we don't need to spend too much time on the White Sox. I'm good on that topic for now. I think there'll be more to talk about. Hopefully, as guys get promoted, things come along. I think there's a few guys that we're about to talk about in Charlotte who could be in Chicago very soon, and then we'll have a reason to talk about the White Sox a little bit more, honestly. We'll start down in Charlotte. I mean, there's a few hitters that just – I don't think have anything to prove in Charlotte. I don't think anybody thinks that anymore, right? It's a matter of when this happens, not an if, right? And the when should be soon, Jeff. I mean, what in the world does Chase Meidroth have to prove in Charlotte to be in Chicago when you've got guys in Chicago that are clearly just not better baseball players than him at this point right now?
Yeah, it was pretty clear. He proved himself with a phenomenal full year last year in AAA. And I was kind of worried that he might take a step back just as a lack of motivation. But no, I mean, this is a guy who through 9 games has a 500 OBP. He's on base half of the time. He's had 7 walks in 7 games. He's scored 11 runs in 7 games. I mean, he
And on top of that, he's flashing power. He leads the team in home runs. He has 3 home runs, and that's not something Mydroth has ever necessarily been known for, right? So 3 home runs, 7 walks to only 4 strikeouts, a couple stolen bases, like you said, a 500 on base percentage. There's just literally not a single thing Mydroth needs to do at this point to prove that he's ready to be in Chicago. When you've got a guy like Jacob Amaya starting, every other day, if not more than every other day in Chicago right now, who provides essentially nothing. I'm not in the camp of Jacob Amaya. I mean, the defense is solid, right? You can say what you want to say. Yeah, it's right. I think this is exactly right for me in here. That's a good point, right? Like he had a rough spring training. He wasn't great in Arizona. I don't think spring training numbers matter that much. I've never thought that, right? But at the same time, like this is all you need to see from Mydroth. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be up tomorrow. I really don't. I think that there's pretty minimal reason to have him in Charlotte still. And I think that just, positionally, right? Like the middle infield in Chicago is doing nothing. I mean, Brooks Baldwin, like we said, has been solid, but Lenine Sosa's not doing much. Jacob Amaya is not doing much. You're not getting much out of these guys, right? So I think it's time for Chase Mydroth to be a Chicago White Sox. I think it's been, you could have made a case it was time last week, but right now, like, I'm just not sure how many more games do anything for him at this point in Charlotte, and I'm very ready to see him in Chicago personally.
Quick question and a comment. The comment is, not only has he been an on-base machine, and not only has he shown power, he's shown a great glove, including not just second base, but also at shortstop. I mean, he's more than held his own at shortstop. Again,
Which is interesting to see.
sample.
The guy, when he came over in the trade, right? I think that the general expectation was he wasn't really a shortstop, right? And that was going to be something where it was like he can play there in a pinch. But now you've got 3 games under his belt at shortstop, 3 games at shortstop, and 4 games at second base. So he's almost getting, he's getting a handful of games there, and he looks fine. He looks capable of the position. I haven't got to watch as much nights as you have, but it sounds like he's been able to handle himself at both positions so far this season. So Mydroth is someone that I think most people, I think everybody who follows the White Sox agrees at this point. But let's get him to Chicago. I really don't think there's much more to say about that. On the 2 catchers, I think you got Caro and you've got Teal. And Kyle Teal with an amazing start has definitely slowed down a little bit. Has had a good amount of whiffs in this weekend. But in general, like, I mean, I think Edgar Caro, to me, was already a little bit more league ready than Kyle Teal. And I think as much as Kyle Teal has flashed a few really exciting home runs and some big moments, right? Like, I still kind of believe that Edgar Caro is a little bit more ready than Kyle Teal, to be honest with you, Jeff. And I'm curious to hear your take on that. But it's, for me, I mean, Caro's getting on base at a 500 clip, just like Mydroth is. He's hitting 379. It's consistent contact. It's very steady approach. He has less strikeouts, less whiff than Teal has had so far at this point. You're not going to get maybe quite as much potential impact, but I don't even know if that's true. I mean, Caro had more home runs than Teal did last year, and I think that Caro, it has the ability to impact the ball as much as Teal does, honestly. I think that, I know that a lot of people, this is what Ian said, I completely agree with Ian on this one, because I think that, it's Teal is deemed closer in a public scale, but I think that Caro's more ready. I think Caro's a little bit more ahead of him defensively. I think Caro's got a little bit better approach in general. And honestly, I think that Caro, both of them really could start tomorrow for Chicago and be an upgrade. This is from Alec. I agree with Alec on this one. I think Mydroth could go up today. I think we're going to talk about some bullpen guys in a bit here, but I think that's completely right as well. Where are you at with Caro and Teal personally, Jeff? Because I think what really it comes down to is I believe the date for being able to be on the roster long enough to be eligible for a prospect promotion incentive pick is in 2 days from now or 3. It's either the 9th or the 10th, I believe, to have enough days on the active roster to be able to qualify for that draft pick. Do you think either of these guys has a chance to win Rookie of the Year if they get called up? And is that worth calling them up this early?
Wow. Who are some of the other candidates for Rookie of the Year?
I mean, right now, Christian Campbell is very much established, is breaking away from the pack, I think, so far. But honestly, I could easily see Campbell taking a step backwards. He got his huge contract extension. I do think there's still some, from people I know, there's still some slight concerns with his swing and certain pitch types in certain locations. But he's proven people wrong for the most part, early this season. But Christian Campbell is the only rookie in the AL that has really stood out so far. Obviously, Jackson Jobe is still an incredible talent. There's other guys that have been called up or need to be called up, right? But I think, I don't know. I think that these guys, whether or not it's tough. It's tough because you want to save that arbitration time and you want to keep these 2 around in Chicago longer. But at the same time, like, I just don't think there's much to show here in AAA for either Caro or Teal, especially Caro, honestly. And I think that when you look at Chicago, right, like the guys aren't, Corey Lee and Matt Dice aren't doing much, and I don't think they're going to do much. So at what point do you just say, let's do it, right? Like, let's see it, and let's give them a chance to prove that they are some of the best rookies in baseball.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have a strong preference for which one goes up first. I think they're both capable. They're both excellent, and they both deserve a shot. The thing about Caro is he had a big year last year, and he's picked up right where he left off in terms of impacting the ball. But yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
happy if they both went up, even though Lee and Matt Ice are doing fine. But are they the future of the Sox? Probably not.
I mean, yeah, Corey Lee is hitting well, I guess. I mean, in 13 at bats. That's not a sample that I'm willing to put a ton of stock in, right? I mean, Matt Dice is doing minimal. Matt Dice is 4 for 16. Corey Lee's 5 for 13. Yeah, Corey Lee's gotten. I mean, whatever. The base numbers look fine. This is a great question here because this is something that we're going to have to consider as the season goes on. Robert said, "Do you trade Corey Lee?" And eventually, right? Like, I think you can. I think you can float him out there and see who bites on a catcher because I think that there is, for me, like, I have no doubt that by mid-season, it will be Caro and Teal catching for this team. So whether that means you keep Corey Lee to have a third catcher in case one of those rookies really struggles or in case one gets hurt, like, I think that's an okay decision, right? I think that'd be fine. I don't think it's bad to have a third solid catcher because Matt Dice, he'll get a DFA, I think. I don't think Dice is, I mean, maybe you flip him to some team that's desperate for a catcher because they have an injury or something like that. But generally, I think that, I think that Theis is going to be the DFA guy. And I think Lee, you're definitely not DFAing Lee. He's still too good of a player, in my opinion, to DFA. So then it's like you either have him as your starter in Charlotte with the potential to fill in a gap for one of those rookies, or you look at the trade market for him because I do think there's plenty of teams that would look at Corey Lee as a quality MLB backup. I just don't think he's better than Kyle Taylor or Edgar Caro.
No, I agree. If he's got options, yeah, you want to park him in Charlotte and keep him for, an injury will be coming down the road to one of those guys. It's a tough position. But on the other hand, I think Robert's got a great idea about trading him. I mean, there are already teams that have lost their starting catcher, Arizona, St. Louis.
Right.
A lot of teams already looking for catching help.
And this is an interesting idea. I don't think there's nearly enough there with the bat. I can't see Lee being enough of a hitter at any point in his career to be worthy of a first base spot, especially, given that the White Sox are already going to have to mix in Caro and Teal potentially at first or DH as well. I don't really see that happening personally. But I do think that Lee is a guy that you'll have to shop and you'll have to consider the possibility of it. Moving past those guys, well, let's get down to, there's a few more guys to mention in Charlotte. Tim Elko just keeps hitting, Jeff. He just keeps doing it, man. I mean, every time I have never been the biggest Elko guy. And I know a lot of people love Tim Elko. A lot of people are big on Tim Elko. I've never been a guy that has heavily believed in Elko just because I don't know if I see the approach ever being good enough to be a big league hitter. He's hitting 333, OPSing 906 so far through his first 7 games in Charlotte. Has a home run, has popped a couple high exit velocities, has actually walked 5 times in 7 games, which is something that we didn't see at that type of pace and that type of clip from Elko in the past. So Elko, like, if you told me Tim Elko could take over the second half at first base for Andrew Vaughn, if Vaughn's track continues the way it's going right now, I'm okay with it. Honestly, I would be okay seeing Tim Elko with 3-4 days a week at first base for the White Sox in the second half of the season. I just think that they're, I don't know, why not, right? Like at some point, why not? I think that's what it comes down to. And I think that I'm curious to see if the approach developments continue a little bit. It does have 11 strikeouts, which is too much for 7 games. But 5 walks is really encouraging from Elko in a way that he wasn't really doing at times last year. So curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I don't know what his future is. But I guess it really all comes down to what do the White Sox think about Andrew Vaughn? Do they
Right.
want to keep him? Do they want to move him at the deadline?
Yeah. Speaking of Vaughn, he's one of the other guys, along with Tauchman and Benintendi, as Alec mentions here, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of guys where it's like, do they have? Can you get anything in a trade? What does it look like in a trade? I don't know yet. I think it's going to take time to see. Tauchman's got to get healthy. He's got to get back. Benintendi, it all depends on the contract factor, right? Like, if the White Sox are willing to eat some money, maybe you can trade him for something. Vaughn, I don't think there's much of a market. I doubt there's much of a market at this point. Probably a DFA or a non-tender candidate next offseason at this point. Unfortunately, this is the last guy we got to talk about in Charlotte. I think we'll talk about a few pitchers, but I want to get down to Birmingham sooner than later. But It's been rough. It's been rough for Colson Montgomery. It has been a really tough start. Homered on opening day for Charlotte, mammoth of a homer. Was like, oh man, there's the Colson Montgomery we love to see. Since then, it's been tough. 3 for 31 this season, 18 strikeouts and 31 at bats. Yeah, it's been really ugly. It's been hard to watch for sure. I haven't, like I said, I haven't watched a ton of Knights games so far. Where are you at, Jeff? And what was kind of the vibe from being in Charlotte a couple times?
I think it was brutal for all of us in the press box to watch. We're all pulling for him. I
Yeah.
believe it was, God, was it Sunday night in the bottom of the eighth? He came up with the bases loaded, and they were down by a run or two, and it just seemed like this can turn him around. Get a big hit here and get this thing turned around. But he struck out, and
Yeah.
his body language is bad. He's embarrassed. He's frustrated, and it's just brutal
Yeah.
right now. Just brutal.
Yeah.
I really
It's tough.
to be honest, I was shocked that, and maybe he was there, but I was shocked that the guy from Baltimore, the new director of hitting, um, who am I
Ryan
thinking of?
Fuller. Yeah. Ryan Fuller.
Yeah, I thought maybe Ryan Fuller would be in town to work with him already.
Yeah. Yeah. We will see. I just, part of me feels like it's just this layer of like stressing so much to prove that he's ready for the big leagues that it's just the approach has just taken a huge step back. As Ian says here, like it's just, I mean, Ian watches all these games, but it's like the approach has been really, really bad. It has been really bad. We'll see what happens. Again, I'm not going to take 8 games and result and equate it to he's terrible and he's a bust, right? Like I'm not going to do that. I will never do that, right? Like let's give it a few weeks. It's been ugly. At some point, you got to consider like a phantom IL stint. Does he need to go on the IL for a week or two to just reset? Does he need to, have just 3 days off to reset completely? I don't know what it looks like at this point for Colson Montgomery. I think that he needs a break and he needs some sort of adjustments. And I'm hoping today's off day and this weekend, and we'll see what happens this week against a good Jacksonville team. But Charlotte Knights are 6-3 heading into this week. Overall, a pretty solid showing from the Knights team, all things considered. On the pitching side, Jeff, not a ton we want to highlight here. Nick Nastrini and Jairo Uriarte have both struggled in their first 2 starts each. Those are the 2 guys that are kind of considered the top depth arms. There's going to be a point where those guys, like I really want both those guys to be a starter. I think both of them can be a starter. I think both of them have the stuff to be a starter. The command has not been there for either of them at all. It wasn't there last year, and it has not been there this year. We'll see what happens. I think they've both been hit around. They've both been walking a lot of guys, and I'm curious to see how it plays out from there. But I do think that both Iriarte and Nastrini are going to remain starters in Charlotte. And right now, they're not a start. They're not an option in Chicago, right? Like if the White Sox need a starter at some point, like it's not going to be those 2, unfortunately. As much as we want it to be those 2, like they are not in a place right now where they're capable of going up and starting big league games. So we're going to see what happens there. I think you're going to give them, at least 2 to 3 months of starts in Charlotte before you reconsider anything. But I think both those guys are 2 guys that could really play up in a bullpen role. You don't want to make that move yet. You want them to be a starter, but right now it just is not coming along out of the rotation.
Yeah, I'm somewhat pessimistic about the pitching staff and the starting staff in Charlotte in general. I think they're going to bear the brunt of all those injuries to Mason Adams and all the other guys.
This is
and
exactly what Ian just said here. This is exactly right. It's rough. Those 3 were supposed to be your three starters in that Charlotte rotation, right? And I think all those guys were going to be. Thorpe was definitely going to be at the big leagues once healthy. I think Adams and Bush would have been right behind him in terms of being in the big leagues fairly early this season. Those 3 all getting TJ puts the upper level depth at a really tough spot overall. I think it's going to take some time to figure out what that starting depth looks like at the upper levels for sure.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering when Gallons and Tyler Schweitzer come up to Charlotte, because
I think with their age and their experience, once they get a couple starts in Birmingham, I would not be surprised to see them make that move. On the bright side, Charlotte bullpen, Jeff, really impressive. Pretty impressive, honestly. Overall, top to bottom, I think there's been a lot of guys that have been impressive. Trey Mago with 6 1/3 scoreless innings. Stephen Wilson has 3 scoreless innings. Jared Schuster's allowed 1 run across 6 2/3. Addison Coffey's allowed 2 runs across 5 1/3. Just really solid performances from a lot of guys in that bullpen. Eric Adler makes his AAA debut this weekend, gets bumped up to AAA earlier this week when who was it? Gus Varland goes down with an injury, which I think is going to be Tommy John. They haven't reported it yet, but I think it's going to be Tommy John. And From there, Eric Adler gets up, and his first 2 games in Charlotte goes 3 innings, 2 hits, no runs. Really awesome to see. Eric Adler is a guy that I think can be a legit bullpen arm in Chicago. Bullpen as a whole, Jeff, has been very solid in Charlotte.
Yeah, that's exciting. We haven't seen that in a while. And some good young arms. Absolutely. Yeah, I saw Adler in his second game up in Charlotte.
Yeah,
Looked terrific. Looked terrific. The
awesome
goes
to hear.
looked good. Multiple games. And I tell you what, Jared Schuster's even has looked good out of the pen,
Yeah,
eating
yes.
multiple innings.
Yeah, 100%. So that's a good thing. I mean, that's the one thing about the White Sox bullpen struggling is that there's guys. I think that, in a couple weeks from now, there's going to be some White Sox guys in the White Sox bullpen where it's like, hey, if you don't start performing, you're going to get DFA'd, and we've got guys to replace you. So I do think there's going to be some changes sooner than later at the big league level in the bullpen with a couple of those guys that might just need a reset. There's guys that have struggled, whether it be Jordan Leisure, or whether it be going down to AAA for a bit, or whether it be a veteran guy like Penn Murphy or other options there in that bullpen who just they say, you know what, we're going to call it and bring up a guy from Charlotte. There's going to be some changes there in the bullpen. Heading down to this is a funny poll from this. Jared Schuster led the big league bullpen in WAR. I did not know that. That's pretty crazy
Really?
if that's the case. I mean that shows how bad that bullpen was. But yeah, I think Schuster will get big league innings later this year in the bullpen. There goes Jeff. I don't know what just happened there. I'll keep it rolling for now, but that's interesting. But let me check in on Jeff real quick. There he is, and he's back.
Leave the keyboard alone.
There we go. I will deal with the keyboard. We are all good on that front. Heading down to Birmingham, let's talk about it. 2 guys to talk about in Birmingham. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on that offense there. We'll mention a few guys after, but I want to jump straight into the pitching in Birmingham. Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, both make their first starts of the season. It looked to me, we'll start with Noah Schultz, who was pitching opening day for the White Sox, or for the Barons, pardon me, down in Birmingham. It looked like Noah Schultz was a victim of some bad luck in that game. 8 hits in 4 innings is not going to happen often to Noah Schultz, but from what I saw, I didn't watch this game live. I watched Ian Eskridge's wonderful highlight video on the FutureSox page that people should check out. But, Noah Schultz did not get beat up, right? Like, it wasn't like he was getting crushed from what it looked like. It didn't seem like he was giving up a ton of hard contact. It didn't seem like he missed a ton of spots. Like, it was more just like he got hit around a little on some bloopers and some singles here and a gapper in the, just some weird hits, some unfortunate luck. It's a tough offense he was facing in general, an offense that always plays pretty well. 4 innings, 4 runs allowed, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. I'm not too worried. As Ian said, 8 singles, 8 hits, 8 singles, a bunch of weak contact. I'm not worried about Noah Schultz. I'm excited to see his next start and see him bounce back from that one, honestly.
Yeah, same here. I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, and then Hagen Smith, totally different type of start for Hagen Smith because he didn't get hit at all, but his command was not there. His command was just not there. 4 walks across 4 innings, but 10 strikeouts. He strikes out the last 6 batters he faced, strikes out the side in both the 3rd and 4th inning for Hagen. So some goods and bads there, right? 4 innings of 1-run ball with no hits allowed, 1-run ball being, all coming from walks and a hit by pitch, right? But 10 strikeouts for Hagen Smith. The stuff is going to play. I'm not worried about the command. Alex says this, but I don't think it's it's not time to think about that yet. I think Hagen Smith, this is his 5th or 6th minor league start. He had 3 starts in Winston last year, I believe, and then his first start in Birmingham now. So his 4th minor league start, right? Zero concern for me on these guys. 10 strikeouts is extremely exciting to see. The stuff is going to play. The slider is ridiculous. He's still mixing in this new curveball that he's playing with. I didn't see much of it. It didn't look like in this game. But at the same time, Hagen Smith is disgusting. These guys are going to be great. Awesome to see them both get 4 innings, even if it wasn't the cleanest start for either of them. But I do think it's going to be really imperative to see them get that 5th inning. I can't wait. I think that's a big jump for both these guys, and neither of them have done it so far. And I'm really excited to see when that 5th inning comes for both of these guys, what it looks like over the course of 5 full innings as opposed to just 4, which, we know Noah only threw 4 every start last year. He didn't throw more than 4 once. Hagen, we haven't seen throw more than 4 in the minor leagues at all. 5th inning, I'm waiting to see it. I gear it up, give it time. It's April. I get it, but I'm really excited to see what inning 5 looks like for both these guys from a velocity standpoint, from a command standpoint, and just from a longevity throughout the outing.
And do we know if they're going to stick with a 6-man rotation? Because at some point they need to go to a 5-man.
It is going to be a 5. From what I've heard, it's going to be a 5. Tyler Schweitzer will be piggybacking Grant Taylor. So that's what I've heard, is that it's going to be a rotation of Schultz, Smith, Gowans, Wilkham, and Gonzalez, Grant Taylor, with Tyler Schweitzer as the piggyback on Grant Taylor, probably throwing four. With Grant Taylor's limitations, I don't think Grant Taylor throws more than 3 innings for a while, is my guess. I think it's going to be 3, then maybe 4 for Taylor. I don't think Taylor gets above 4, though, in which case then you have 5 innings allotted to Tyler Schweitzer pretty much every time Grant Taylor starts.
Yep.
Rest of the Birmingham stuff, not a ton to review. Oscar Colas with a nice home run. Weird to see him in Birmingham again. Feel bad for the guy, but also just shows where the organization is at with his development, unfortunately, for better or for worse. And then you go down, Mario Camilletti with a nice start of the weekend, was kind of the best hitter there to start the weekend off. Cool to see that for sure. I think Camilletti's a utility guy. So Ian says this just to confirm that Grant Taylor will only throw 3 innings. That makes sense. I think that's about right for him for sure at this point, which means Tyler Schweitzer will get the opportunity to throw up to 6 innings on any given day. So he's piggybacking. The other thing that's interesting, Birmingham, I don't know how much you didn't watch much Birmingham, but having Omar Narvaez as the catcher in Birmingham is pretty fascinating. I wonder what he feels about it, honestly. I'm kind of curious. I get it. It's kind of a weird player-coach situation. There we go. Wolf Larson popping in with exactly like that, right? This is a veteran MLB experienced catcher who's now catching in Double-A, and it feels a little bit like offensive to an extent. But at the same time, like I think it is almost kind of ushering him into a coaching career in a way. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So I'm curious to see what that continues to look like. And it also has led to Michael Turner playing some first base, which is interesting because Michael Turner is a guy who has been a catcher. And in general, some of his value has always come from his defense. But I am curious to see kind of what it looks like at first base if his offense ticks up a little. He had a nice weekend offensively. Generally, just a helpful thing to have, in that system moving forward. Another guy that can, catch, play some first. There's really not a clear first baseman in Birmingham as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, and as I listen to you describing the 2 catchers in Birmingham, I think about Kelvin Harris being back in Kannapolis,
right,
and
it
not
just
even
didn't
the
show much.
primary catcher there.
Right. He didn't show enough last year to get that spot in Winston over a guy like Appel. And then it's like, you can't bump him up after he struggled in Winston. So it's like, I'm not sure what it looks like. But in general, William Bergoya makes his Double-A debut, a little bit of a rough weekend for him, 2 games, not worried at all. Some other guys that had some decent, DJ Gladney had a decent weekend. And he went 7 for 3 the first weekend. Not a ton to report there. Only 2 games for Birmingham. They got rained out. If you want to learn more about Birmingham, Ian's got a conversation with Doug, the new play-by-play guy who replaced the wonderful Kurt Bloom in Birmingham. So that will be dropping tomorrow, which is going to be great to learn. So definitely tune into that. Check out more of the Birmingham stuff, but not a lot to talk about there outside of obviously Schultz and Smith. Heading on to Winston. Winston with a solid first weekend overall. This is a team that the roster on paper is probably the weakest of these 4 organizations, but a 2-1 series win to start out the year for Winston and a lot of offense, Jeff. I mean, this team was mashing. They went, Friday they started the season, they had a 6-2 loss, but then Saturday and Sunday they come out and win 16-6 and then 11-3 in those 2 games to finish out the weekend. So a really solid showing actually from an offense in Winston that we think is going to be one of the weaker offenses overall and is kind of still waiting for some reinforcements from Kannapolis, but ended up having a pretty good weekend to start out the season in Winston.
Yeah, I think I tweeted out at some point that for Winston to have a good offense, so many things had to come together. The guys from Kannapolis who got promoted are going to have to take it up a notch. Some guys who had rough years last year were going to have to pick it up a notch. And in those 2 games or all 3 games, it happened. I mean, everybody was hitting. So, we'll see if that continues.
The offense.
The Wolf question. Zavala is there. He did not get a hit, but what do you have? He had 6 walks in 3 games. So
he did walk. He did walk a lot. He had one hit, I believe. He went 1 for 8 with 6 walks as well. This is another good question. When Albert has been affiliated ball, he's rehabbing right now, so probably unclear, but we'll definitely head to Kannapolis at some point this season. The Winston lineup, some of the standouts, I mean, the 2 guys that one of your favorites and one of my favorites for sure, Jackson Appel and Sam Antonacci, 2 of the guys from last year's draft class. These are 2 guys that are they're experienced, right? Like they have that level of experience where I expect them to have a pretty solid season in Winston, honestly. Jackson Appel opens up the year, catches 2 games, goes 3 for for 6 with 3 walks, also a homer, a double. Really, really good showing from Appel to start the season. And then Sam Antonacci does what Sam Antonacci does. Goes 4 for 10, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 2 stolen bases. Also has an opposite field home run. I think that there's more in the tank there for Antonacci in terms of power. That's one thing I really noticed in spring training this season. We both, when we were there and got to check it out a little bit, I think Antonacci showed a little bit more in terms of impacting the ball than he did last year. And that's the big step for him, right? Like, this is a guy who is going to give you quality at bats. He's going to have good at bat to ball skills. If he can be a guy that could hit you 10 homers, right? You're not expecting a ton, right? Like, I think the profile was probably like, he's like a 2 to 3 homer a season guy, right? Coming out of college, right? He was very contact focused and a guy that you're expecting to be an on base threat. If Antonacci can tick up towards a 10 home run type of hitter, you're looking at a big leaguer right there. That's what I've said for a long time. And I still believe that Sam Antonacci is one of the more well-rounded hitters in the system.
Yeah. 6 runs in 3 games, 2 stolen bases. As you pointed out, the home run, versatile defensively. Yeah, there's a lot to like there. One other note about Jackson Appel, threw out a base runner, big arm. I like the
very experienced catcher for sure. Obviously an older guy being a 5th-year draft pick, but it has experience, has been solid. Ryan Galaney, another guy from the 2023 draft class, experienced college guy. He dominated Kannapolis last year, got up to Winston, definitely regressed a little in Winston. Looks more comfortable out of the gate. 3 games, 4 extra base hits, 2 doubles, a triple, and a homer, 7 RBIs. I'm excited to see what Galaney can do. I think this is a guy, there's not a ton of corner infield bats in the system that you think can hit enough to become valuable at those positions. Galaney's a guy who, in Kannapolis looked like he could have been a really quick Tim Elko type of riser last year. Took him a little bit longer to adjust to Winston compared to a guy like Elko. But I think this year, if he starts strong in Winston, I could easily see Galaney getting innings at first base in Birmingham at some point this season for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch him and the guy who's hitting behind him, Caden Connor. You've got Appel, Connor, and Galaney, the 3, 4, 5 hitters in the lineup. And
for sure.
Off to good starts. Connor and Galaney both struggled, as you noted, last year a little bit in Winston. So,
yeah, Alec Makarevitz is another guy who was last year's undrafted, top undrafted free agent signing. I think he's a guy who is also going to continue to get run at DH at first base, maybe even a little bit at third base here and there. It seems like another, experienced college bat. The last hitter to mention there is Raul Perez, who opens the year going 3 for 12 at a nice home run, a nice double, a handful of walks as well for Perez. I'm excited to see what it looks like. I'm looking forward to seeing what Perez looks like at this next level. I think that, we saw a lot that we liked from him in Canyon last year, and he's only 20 years old. He's going to be 20 years old all season. So if Perez spends the entire season in Winston, that's perfectly okay with me.
Yeah. 2 extra base hits in 3 games. Yeah. Love that.
Pitching side in Kannapolis this weekend, we got 3 starts. The 3 starts were Tanner McDougal and then Lucas Gordon and Aldrin Batista. 3 guys that we're excited to see this year for sure. I think McDougal, is a tricky case because he is so talented. And as the stuff everybody says, Matt Zaleski told me this is the stuff to look out for. I know somebody else in an interview, one in the White Sox organization, said this is a guy to look out for. There's a lot to look out there for with Tanner McDougal. It just, the command is still just not where you need it to be. That's the unfortunate situation with McDougal. 4 walks in his first start. I think we'll see what happens with McDougal. I really want to see him take that step. And there's still a part of me that says sooner than later, you just got to put him in the bullpen and fast track him because his stuff is that good where he could be an excellent reliever. I get why they want to keep him as a starter, but I get it. He was an early round draft pick. He was a high school draft pick. He had a lot of upside. He's flashed plenty of stuff, but it's been 3.5 years now of Kannapolis and Winston-Salem for McDougal. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of talent, a lot of control issues.
Yeah. Aldrin Batista battled some control issues as well this week. 3 walks. He gets pulled in the end of the middle of the 4th inning, goes 3 2/3, allows 2 hits, 2 runs, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. I didn't watch Batista start, but I saw some of the clips. Excited to see more from Batista. I will definitely be watching his start next week because I definitely want to see what the rest of his stuff looks like. But, good to have him in Winston. I think he's going to be in Winston for the majority of the season, and he'll push his way to Birmingham if he has a good performance in Winston like he did last year. Lucas Gordon goes 4 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. about what you think from a Lucas Gordon start. I mean, a lot of Lucas Gordon starts, you're getting some contact, right? Some consistently solid contact, but pretty good command. He's going to miss some bats. He's going to give you some solid innings. Overall, decent performance from all three pitchers. The offense definitely stood above the pitching staff. Interesting to see, though, with this Winston staff, I was wondering who was not going to be in the rotation, right? I think that's one thing we were talking about. It appears that Jake Peppers is already kind of moving into a bullpen role. It'll be maybe a longer bullpen role. This is what Ian said about Aldrin's start, which is helpful insight because I didn't get to watch it, didn't have a feel. That sounds about right based on the clips that I had saw from him. Wasn't his best, but at the same time, Aldrin Batista is someone that I think will have much better starts ahead of him still. Jake Peppers moves into a bullpen role a little bit. It looks like maybe it's just kind of to get him some longer innings. He did throw an inning in 2/3, so maybe it's a little bit of a longer leash bullpen role. But I'm curious to see what Jake Peppers' role looks like going forward because he was a starter all of last year. But you and I have both talked about how Jake Peppers probably is a relief pitcher moving forward at some point. It's just a matter of kind of how they stack the rest of this rotation heading into the year.
Yeah, I saw Jake, and he told me that they made the decision. He's going into the pen right out of the gate, and seemed pretty fired up about it. I was a little surprised, given how well he finished last year, but yeah, it's probably where he was going to end up. Shane Murphy also seems to be in the pen.
That one I expected, I think, just as an older guy.
And looked good, though. Looked good out of the pen. So, in his appearance.
Right, I'm with you there. Robert asked, is Ryan Galaney a prospect? He is a prospect, not a top 30 guy for us at FutureSox, but definitely having been a 2023 draft pick is still qualified as a prospect for sure. So the rest of that Winston, roster, I think will continue to kind of play its way out. There's some intrigue there. I still am excited to see some of the guys from Canny make their way down or up to Winston at some point this season, whenever that may be, whether it's early in the season or a little bit later as well. We will see what happens there. Anything else you have in terms of notes from the Winston side of things? I know you weren't there. You're going to be there in person this week, so definitely follow along with Jeff for plenty of in-person content at Winston-Salem this week.
Of the 3 North Carolina affiliates, Winston is the only one that's playing at home this week, so I hope to get up there for a couple of games for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Catch a batting practice, talk to Pat Leland, get a feel.
Awesome. Yeah, Pat, it'll be cool to see for you. I'm sure to see Pat up there getting his first taste at Winston for sure. That'll be fun. So yeah, we'll see Winston-Salem. I'll get a lot more intel on them this week when they're in person, and Jeff will be there covering it. So make sure to follow along for that. Kannapolis. With a 1-2 start to the season, they were at home against Hickory. They lost 7-4 on Friday, then turned it around, or they lost again right on the close game, late game, 6-5 on Saturday, and then Sunday finished out their weekend on a high note with the first win of the season, winning 7-5 in that final game of the series. So they go 1-2 to start the season, but plenty of guys in Kannapolis that impressed me. The first one I want to talk about, because I don't remember which games you were at or not. Mason Moore. Were you at the Mason Moore start?
I was. That was the home opener.
Tell me about the Mason Moore home opener start, because from the numbers and from the videos I watched, Mason Moore to me looked like the guy that I was hoping he was going to be when the White Sox drafted him, which was a very, very good sophomore in college at Kentucky, followed by a rough junior season, but flashed, top 5 to 7 round type stuff in his sophomore year, and then fell off a little bit, ended up being the 14th round pick by the White Sox this past year.
Yeah, it's funny. We were so psyched, and rightly so, about the offense in Kannapolis, and because on paper and eventually in person it's going to explode.
Right.
But it turned out pitching was the story this weekend in Kannapolis. We had 3 really nice starts, I think. But Mason Moore was by far the best of the 3 starters. 5 innings, looked sharp for the entire time, in complete control. Very impressive.
Yeah, 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 run. It was unearned. 3 walks, a few little, command spells, but 6 strikeouts for Mason Moore. Really limited damage, pretty much none, if maybe 1 hard hit ball against him. There was pretty minimal hard contact from what I saw from that start. This is a guy who has, high level college baseball experience, is, as the build of a starter for sure. He's a big dude. I think that Mason Moore is the type of guy who could rise, decently quickly with a strong start. I could see him along the lines of what we saw from, Lucas Gordon last year, for example, who got to Winston-Salem midseason, ended up having a pretty solid finish of the season in high A. I think Moore could be the similar type of guy where, he's going to be one of the leaders of this Canny staff, but I do think that he, should get to Winston-Salem at some point this season.
Yeah. College pitcher, you got to move them quickly. They should do really well in Kannapolis, and got to get them to Winston so you can really start to get a sense as to what they're all about.
Yeah. The next guy in terms of the rotation that we want to discuss here, Luis Reyes. For those who didn't listen, I had Dan Haloti on last year, and Dan Haloti is the play-by-play guy for Kannapolis. Does a lot of other things at Kannapolis. The Kannapolis expertise, and Dan Haloti said that everybody he's talked to has said that Luis Reyes is the nastiest arm in Kannapolis this season. There's a lot of pretty good arms in Kannapolis, so I took notice of that, and I was like, I gotta key in on a little bit here on Dan Haloti's recommendation and see what Luis Reyes looks like here out of the gate. And it wasn't perfect, but definitely some pretty interesting stuff we saw from Luis Reyes here. This is a guy who throws a ton of sliders. I got a little bit of extra private data on Luis Reyes from a pal of mine, so I was able to see a little bit of what his pitch stuff looked like. He threw 35 sliders compared to 27 fastballs, 4 changeups mixed in there as well. The slider was really interesting, Jeff. He threw a 35 sliders at a 77% strike rate with a lot of really sharp movement to it. He had negative 2.5 vertical, negative 5.6 horizontal movement, really good shape generally for a slider. He needs to bring that horizontal down a little bit maybe, but it's got some really nice movement to it. Definitely spins it well, throws it for a strike a lot. Overall, just really effective pounding the zone. Even the 24 two seams he threw at a 67% strike rate. He threw 4 changeups, 3 of them were a strike. Good strike rate, pretty good stuff from Luis Reyes. Goes 4 innings, allows 3 runs, 4 strikeouts. Very excited to see this guy build because this is a 19-year-old in single A who, pitched in the ACL last year. He's going to be 19 all season too. He just turned 19 this offseason. And he's in the rotation already to open up the year for Kannapolis. That clearly says something about how the organization views Luis Reyes, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Our guy Dan tipped us off about him, and Reyes was impressive. Unfortunately, that was the game of the 3 that I did not get to see. But sound like Reyes has got a big future there.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what it looks like. I'm looking forward to see what that. I hadn't seen much of him heading into the season, so I'm excited to see kind of what things look like for him going forward. Nick Pinto with the 3rd start of the weekend. He went 4 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs, 2 of them being earned, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. Nick Pinto is a veteran, experienced pitcher. UC Irvine guy, California guy. So I saw him pitch in college actually a couple of times. Curious to hear what you thought about Pinto's start and what you kind of see with him going forward.
Well, it's interesting. I talked to manager Chad Pender after the game, and I specifically asked him about Pinto because Pinto gave up 3 runs in 4 innings, but it could have been a lot worse. He had a lot of traffic on bases. And so I said to Chad, it was a gritty performance. He kept you guys close and close enough that you were eventually able to battle back. And Chad said, actually, he thought that Pinto pitched really well, and that there was only one guy who had hard contact off of him. He thought the numbers didn't really bear out how well he did.
Interesting to know. So I think that hopefully we'll get to see some more solid starts from Pinto moving forward. The Kannapolis, I think I'm curious to see what that looks like for Kannapolis. I think the remaining starters, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. Christian Opper started the FutureSox Showdown game, so he will obviously be back into that rotation mix. He was exceptional. We talked about that last week, which was great to hear that Opper was really good. And I think the last starter will be Ricardo Brizuela. Could be wrong. It could be Justin Sinibaldi as well, or it could be both of them if it's going to be a 6-man rotation. Those are the other 2 guys, aside from Opper, that I would expect to be getting starts potentially for the Kannapolis Cannonballers.
Yeah, I would imagine Brizuela gets the 5th start. Yeah.
And then Sinibaldi potentially as the 6th, or Sinibaldi as the long relief type guy, because I do think they want to get Sinibaldi some substantive innings as well.
Well, they'll probably go with a 6-man rotation.
I think so, right? Yeah, I guess Canny usually does run a 6-man, so it probably is Brizuela. So it's Opper, Brizuela, and Sinibaldi as the remaining 3 starters to mix in with that rotation group. Briefly, hard to gauge any bullpen stuff through 3 games. Briefly want to mention 2 bullpen guys that you probably haven't heard much about. Eric McAtee with a really nice inning and 2/3 of hitless, scoreless ball this weekend, undrafted guy. Just a guy to keep an eye on there that I think could have a little bit of upside. I've heard from some people that he could be somebody to keep an eye on a little bit. And then Jack Young, 9th rounder out of Iowa, who didn't throw a ton in college compared to a lot of these other draft picks by the White Sox last year, but got the save opportunity in the first win and threw a scoreless inning to close down the save for Kannapolis.
Jack is a fascinating pitcher because he throws both sidearm and over the top.
Right.
So in effect, he he's got, instead of, 3 pitches, he has six. And
Hmm.
I asked him after he saved the game on Sunday. I said, "Did you throw all 6 pitches in the game?" He said, "Yeah, I think I pretty much did in his one
Interesting.
inning." So yeah,
Yeah,
really.
I got to watch
I,
some more film on Jack Young.
yeah, I want to watch next time he pitches and pay closer attention now that I'm onto that. That's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, definitely an interesting look out of the bullpen. Somebody that, it's always good to have some unique bullpen arms to throw in there. Heading over to the offensive side, we'll start with the two newcomers, and then we'll get into some of the guys that have been there. Braden Montgomery's first weekend of affiliated minor league baseball, right? He didn't play it all last season coming off the injury, gets traded to the White Sox. This is his minor league debut this weekend. 3 games with 3 hits, a double, a homer, walks once, steals 2 bases. Braden Montgomery, what was just your kind of general takeaway from 3 games of live action, real Braden Montgomery, not just spring training games?
Well, and we have to keep in mind, not only did he not play pro ball last year, but he hasn't played organized ball since June when he got hurt.
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah, he's, you expect a little rust, and no, I didn't see it at all. That is a powerful swing. We talked about he's not maybe the prototypical hitter in terms of
Right.
body size, but when I got to see him up close, he was a little bigger and stronger than I gave him credit for, and that incredible bat speed, just really great bat speed. And they won the
Yeah.
game on Sunday because he came up with the bases loaded and had a two out, 2 strike count, and ripped a double into the right off the right center field wall to clear the bases. So clutch hitter. Yeah.
Yeah. Excited to see more Brady Montgomery. Caleb Bonnemer is the other newcomer to this roster and this organization. Second round pick last year. Both of us were extremely impressed with Bonnemer overall. Yeah, this is another good sign. This is a good point here from my guy who's, this is a very good point. Montgomery's, has generally been a weaker hitter from the right side. Good to see that some of those hits came from the right side. So if his chances of, sticking as a switch hitter, right, he's going to have to produce more from the right side than he did last year in college, right? So we'll see how that plays out over time. Caleb Bonnemer gets 3 starts, starts all the games. I just think it's awesome Caleb Bonnemer's on this roster. I think that for him, the learning experience of playing with Braden Montgomery, with Casey Sauke, with another young star in a George Walkow, right? Like I think in general, Bonnemer is going to learn a lot this season. I think he's going to be in Kannapolis all year. His first opening weekend, nothing crazy. Goes 2 for 10, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, but still just some hard contact from Bonnemer, and I think looks comfortable and looks like he's ready to be in single A, I think. And even at 19 years old, I think the organization has that much faith in him where they're willing to put him there. Starts 2 games at shortstop, 1 game at third base. So also something to note there that he's already getting, some innings at third base. Could be a forecast for the future potentially, but for now he still is being viewed as the shortstop there.
Yeah, he he might have the same issue Colson has. Is he going to get too big for shortstop? So it's
Right.
probably not a bad idea to let him play a little third base. Did not look overmatched. He looked in control. I thought he played some really excellent defense as well.
Yeah, that's good to hear for sure. I'm glad to hear that because I didn't get to watch too much of those games, but I'm excited to hear that because him sticking on the left side of the infield, whether it be at short or third, is going to be big for his development, and his offensive outlook paired with a high level defender would make him a really high end prospect. George Walkow, Wolf asked, is he playing right field? George Walkow is the starting right fielder and will be the starting right fielder. It sounds like he's going to be pretty much locked into the right field spot for the most part in Kannapolis this season. That homer in the FutureSox showdown was crazy. Dan said it was probably the furthest home run he's ever seen at that park, he thinks, from calling Candy games. Just an absolute tank. This weekend, his opening weekend goes 2 for 11, but did have a walk. He stole 3 bases. I think that's one thing to mention there with George. We've always said from the start when he got drafted that he has sneaky speed, but George Walkow, for a guy who is going to strike out a good amount, and hopefully that's going to come down, but no matter what, he's always going to be a guy based on his profile who's going to have some high strikeout numbers, right? If he can steal some bags when he gets on base, that could be a whole nother layer to his game that really complements that power well. He's got the speed. It's, surprising from a guy that strong, but he's got the speed to steal 15, 20 bags in a season if things go well for him.
I know I am reading way too much into 3 games, but I really was watching George closely when he was trying to hit spin. And I thought he looked better at it than last year which is
It's
an
good.
encouraging sign. I mean, we know
It's
there's still
good.
going to be a lot of strikeouts, but I, I had I had some. I thought there were some encouraging signs.
That's good to hear. I think that's going
Yeah.
to be the biggest thing. Watching him hit breaking balls, watching him take some more pitches, whiff a little less. Those are the things we're going to be looking for Walkout this year. And I think we're going to see elements of it. It's going to take some time. There's going to be some ups and downs, of course, but I do think that we're going to see some positivity from there. Nick McLean, Casey Salke make their minor league, their canny debuts, I guess, for both of them, because Salke was in Winston last year and McLean didn't play at all last year. Both of them with a rough first weekend, but 2 games each. Not much to talk about there. Let's see how they get going this week. I'm sure both of them will have some good moments here in the near future. Javier Mogollon only gets 4 at bats in his first weekend. They're definitely going to ease him into some innings. Still very, very young guy, Mogollon. But actually, no, he got 3 games in. Oh, right. I'm looking at
Yeah,
4 at bats, but it's
great
because he
appearance.
walked 6 times.
Yeah,
He walked 6 times in 3 games. So Mogollon, great plate approach from him. Yeah, I mean, it's a small guy, so I think he's going to naturally get some walks. But it seems like he's always been a guy who's going to find a way to get walks for sure.
yeah. Again, like much like Bonner, I thought the moment wasn't too big for Mogollon. I thought he looked pretty comfortable. He had a really, really bad error that probably led to the loss on Saturday.
Mm,
But at the plate looks really comfortable already. Um, the guy who I thought was most locked in all weekend was Ronnie Hernandez. Uh, he really looked good. He came up in a pivotal situation when they were battling back on Sunday, and I thought this is exactly the guy that I want up there. And sure
yeah.
enough, he lined a single to center field. Yeah,
Nice. It's good to
he
hear.
was
McLean is
very good.
not playing center field. McLean is mostly playing left. I think he'll mix in at center, but it seems like for now, Braden Montgomery is going to be the primary center fielder, with McLean playing primarily left field. I think McLean and Nathan Archer as well will both get occasional innings at center field, but it is going to be primarily Braden Montgomery in center. The other guy briefly mentioned on the offensive side, Mikey Kane, is a guy that I think is kind of off most people's radars. Dan Haloti also mentioned him on the episode as somebody to keep an eye on a little bit, because this is a guy who was drafted in 2023 but has barely played. He only has 200 minor league at bats to his name at this point. He played less than 50 games in Kannapolis last year, dealt with some injuries on and off, was actually pretty solid when on the field, just didn't play a ton last year. Only gets 1 start this weekend at first base, but goes 3 for 4 with a homer and a triple. Came up huge in that game. So Mikey Kane is another name to keep an eye on, who's a little bit behind in what his developmental track in terms of his growth, just because of the injuries, but was a good experienced college hitter who hopefully can be a piece for the Scanny team as well.
Yeah, just a couple of quick notes. Mikey had a great game, triple homer, single, and that last time we were so pulling for him. He got a 4th at bat. And he knew. I asked him after the game. I said, "You're trying to get a double, weren't you?" And he said, "Oh yeah, oh yeah," but wasn't meant to be. Lyle Miller Green had a huge home run. I thought it rivaled the one that Wolkow hit in Winston Salem. It was out of the ballpark completely. Um, and I asked him he's listed on the roster as a 2-way player. I asked him about it.
Yeah.
He said, definitely not pitching the first half of the season. We'll see the second half of the season.
Doesn't seem like he's a pitcher. I think he's a first baseman. Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that they have him listed on the roster that way.
Yeah. A few good questions here from the
Nate
comments.
Archer,
Yeah, go ahead.
he's probably the 4th outfielder. He's probably not going to get on the field a lot unless there's an injury. But I thought I was really impressed with this game on Sunday. I thought he really added a little spark to the offense.
Yeah, good to hear that for sure.
Yep.
A few things in the comments that I want to address here before we get going. Thank you everybody for bearing with us our first live. Hope you've enjoyed kind of being able to interact a little more with us, ask some questions. How long until Braden Montgomery gets to Winston? My prediction, I'm just going to give a date, because why not? Because I don't think he needs to be in Kannapolis very long. May 6th. That's going to be my random date that I throw out there. He doesn't need more than a month in Kannapolis, in my opinion.
It works for me. I'm not seeing anybody in Winston who's blocking him.
I would agree. Really interesting question here from Robert, and then we'll wrap on this kind of. Is there anyone except Bergoya who's a no-doubt shortstop? I'm not even sure Bergoya is a no-doubt shortstop, to be perfectly honest. I think Bergoya could end up being a second baseman as well. To answer your question, no, I don't know, to be honest. I think there's a lot of guys who could be a shortstop, and also a lot of guys who could slot to third or second base, depending on their profile. finding major league shortstops is not easy, people. I'm going to put that, that's just a blanket statement for everybody. Like, that's not an easy task. I think that certain players in Major League Baseball make it look easy when you've got a guy like Bobby Witt or Ellie De La Cruz, sure, but like, a lot of teams really struggle to find legit shortstops. And there's a reason why scouts at the college level, scouts at the major league level, right? Scouts at the minor league level, scouts that people that are scouting high school, right? Like scouts throughout teams and organizations look for shortstops that play legit defense, right? And play a true shortstop. This is true. Ryan Burroughs is probably one of the better shortstops, still makes some mistakes, still probably might not be a shortstop. It's really hard to find shortstops. I think Caleb Bonnemer, the organization wants him to be a shortstop. I think both Sam Antonacci and Raul Perez and Winston are probably second basemen. I think that William Bergoya and Jacob Gonzalez, both probably better at second base. I think Jacob Gonzalez could be better at third base. Colson Montgomery, right, could be a third baseman. I think, Caleb Bonnemer could be a third baseman, right? I don't know if there's a surefire shortstop in this organization. There's a lot of guys that could get there, but also a lot of guys that have work to be done. What say you on that, Jeff?
Yeah, that's a fascinating observation. On the one hand, you just think, oh yeah, there's tons of potential shortstops. You're right. Upon closer inspection, not so much. Winston played Arksy Hernandez at shortstop, and he's definitely not a shortstop. He didn't look comfortable there at all. Wow, I'm gonna have to give that one some thought. That's a kind of a stump
Yeah.
the band kind of thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to think about, but we will wrap there. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate everybody joining live. Hope you enjoyed this. We're gonna keep testing this out. Myself, Jeff, and Dylan Barnes as well. We'll be continually going live, seeing how this works. We're gonna have some fun with it. I hope everybody enjoyed, and we'll bring more questions next time. And we'll see you all soon and next week on the FutureSox Roundup. Thanks, guys. Have a good
Thanks
one,
so
Jeff.
much. All right.
Take care.